We're about to dive into one of the most extreme stories of personal transformation you've probably ever heard. It's a journey that really challenges our whole idea of what's possible for a human being.
So let's just start with the big question, right? Can a mass murderer actually become one of history's greatest saints? I mean, think about that. Can someone who's done the absolute worst things you can imagine not just find redemption, but become this incredible source of inspiration? It sounds, well, impossible, doesn't it? But this very question is at the heart of one man's life.
And that man's name is Jetson Milarepa. He's this legendary, deeply revered figure in Tibetan Buddhism. But his story, it's not some dusty old piece of history. No, it's a raw, powerful drama about sin, about suffering, and honestly, about the unbelievable potential we all have for change.
Okay, so to really understand the saint, you first have to confront the sinner. Milarepa's journey, it doesn't kick off in some peaceful monastery, It starts in a really, really dark place, fueled by loss and this all-consuming desire for revenge.
So picture this, 11th century Tibet. Milarepa is born into a pretty wealthy family. Life is good. But then his dad dies and everything just falls apart. His own aunt and uncle, totally greedy, snatch up the entire family fortune. And just like that, Milarepa, his mom, and his sister are forced into servitude, treated like actual slaves in the very house that should have been theirs.
You could imagine his mother just filled with bitterness, right? She's the one who pushes Milarepa to learn the dark arts. And you have to understand, this wasn't just pure evil for the sake of it. In his head, this was about justice. It was his way of getting back what was stolen and avenging the horrible way his family was treated.
And his vengeance, wow, it was terrifyingly effective. Get this. While all his relatives are celebrating at a wedding feast, Milarepa conjures up this magical storm. It brings the whole house down, killing everyone inside. 72 people, just gone in a flash. But here's the thing, that feeling of satisfaction he thought he'd get from revenge, it never came. Instead, the sheer horror of what he'd done started to sink in. And it didn't bring him peace. It threw him into this massive, soul-crushing spiritual crisis.
And we're talking about more than just feeling guilty. This was like a poison to his soul. He realized that his revenge had created this huge karmic debt, basically a cosmic burden that would follow him for lifetimes. He was terrified and just desperate to find a way out of the darkness he himself had created.
And this is the pivot, right here. His whole motivation does a complete 180. The guy who was looking for a master of black magic to destroy his enemies is now desperately searching for a spiritual master to save his own soul.
So his search eventually leads him to this incredible teacher, a man named Marpa Lotsawa, or Marpa the Translator. He was a big deal, famous for bringing these super important Buddhist teachings from India over to Tibet. But you know, just meeting Marpa, that was only the beginning of the real ordeal.
See, Marpa got it. He knew just how deep Milarepa's sin went, and he knew that just sitting him down for a few lessons wasn't going to cut it. Not even close. Milarepa needed something else, a way to purify himself that was just as extreme as the crimes he'd committed. So instead of a warm welcome, Marpa basically treats Milarepa with what seems like cruel disdain. He flat out refuses to teach him anything. Instead, he just pushes him to the absolute breaking point, physically and mentally. But you have to understand, this wasn't just cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was like a radical kind of spiritual therapy.
And Marpa's method was just relentless. He tells Milarepa to build a stone tower, all by himself. But every single time he's almost done, Marpa comes along, finds some tiny problem, and makes him tear the whole thing down, stone by stone, and then start all over again. This insane, grueling cycle went on, and it was all designed to completely shatter Milarepa's pride and literally have him work off his karma through just pure, backbreaking labor.
So after years of this, years of these intense trials, he finally purifies his past. He's proven he's for real. And at last, Marpa gives him the teachings he's been craving. And this, right here, is where the final and most famous part of his story begins. He basically becomes a hermit, retreating into these remote, lonely caves high up in the Himalayas to just meditate. He lived this incredibly austere life, surviving on almost nothing but nettle soup, which the stories say actually turned his skin green. And get this, he wore only a single, thin cotton robe, even in the freezing cold, because he'd mastered this inner heat practice that kept him warm. And this is what he became famous for. Milarepa didn't sit down and write complicated scholarly texts. Nope, His teachings just flowed out of him as these spontaneous songs. They're called dohas. And these amazing, beautiful poems captured his spiritual insights in a way that absolutely anyone could connect with, whether you were a top scholar or a simple shepherd.
So let's step back a second. When you look at his whole life, from that deep darkness to this incredible light, what's the big takeaway here? What's the legacy of this unbelievable journey?
I mean, his life is just this perfect, stark contrast. The guy who was all about vengeance becomes this beacon of compassion. The master of dark arts becomes the master of himself. A life that was defined by immense sin completely transforms into a life of immense liberation.
And his impact? It's monumental. Milarepa is considered one of the founding fathers of the Kagyu school of Tibetan Buddhism. That's a major lineage that's still thriving today, and his life story is pretty much their ultimate example of what it means to persevere.
And that's really why his story is so powerful, way beyond just Tibet. It's this universal message of hope. It's basically saying that no one is beyond saving. It's telling us that with sincere regret, unwavering dedication, and the right guidance, even the deepest, darkest stains on the human soul can be purified.
So we kind of end up back where we started, but now with a totally new perspective. Milarepa's life, it just completely challenges our ideas of justice, forgiveness, and human potential. It really forces you to ask, what are the true limits of human transformation? And just how much can one person really change?